Good evening. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Upset Podcast. We are doing part two of our discussion on praise and worship. Coming up next. Hey, welcome back to the Upset Podcast. Thank you for tuning in this Sunday evening. We're so happy that you came back to join us. And of course, I never show up here alone. Why would I do that when I have these wonderful people here with me? Hey, guys.
Hello, family.
Howdy.
How's it
everyone?
going? Happy Sunday.
Indeed,
Great.
indeed.
Black History Month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy Black History Month. Hi, Rachel.
Marlena just sat there. Always, you just running in.
What?
Yep, just your members. I'm saying you're a great pastor.
She
You're a great
is.
pastor.
She
Oh,
really is.
thank you, Pat. Thank you, Tally.
Well,
She really is. I mean, she really is.
The
You're
only one I know that
You're a
has
good
wings.
pastor too, Pat, because you're trying to, pay for a Christian
Oh,
education
man,
for all of
yeah.
America.
Oh yeah.
all of America.
Good,
All of America.
notable.
He said America.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
for those who don't know what we're talking about, Pat, tell everybody what you're doing down at your church.
We are going to contribute to our children's Christian education. G.E. Peters, DuPont Park, wherever they go. TA, even though TA is in Potomac, Pine Forge.
Oh, that's nice.
We're going to do 50% started in spring. Starting in the fall. I'm sorry, of 24.
Oh, for
Yes.
each
How can
student
they
that
transfer the
goes?
memberships to your church?
These
I'm
students-
telling
Say
you,
again,
yeah.
GP.
There's going to be a lot of transfers.
Well, the truth is that there are
He's gonna bring his
stipulations.
baby there from Virginia.
Yeah, right. There's stipulations to it. You have to be there 6 months. That's why we gave the edge. You have to be there
Oh,
6 months.
okay.
You have to give a tithe, and you have to show your salary, your W-2s. Yep.
Oh,
And you,
you went there.
Yep.
Ooh.
You took the full Creflo trip, huh?
Hey, they don't have, and listen, it's not really even an offering thing. We just want, and the parents must must participate in Pathfinders, Adventurers, or something youth and children.
Ooh, man.
Love it.
Like,
Wow.
I think it's great. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to understand how you were able to do it. I mean, how big is your church?
We have about maybe 100 and maybe 120 that show every Sabbath between that. But let me give some credit. Pastor Waters and Pastor Hostin, they were working that out as we got along. And it's a big thing for me. I love Christian education. So I'm really taking the back end of what they were planning and moving ahead from there. So it's not just, it wasn't just my idea. They already had it rolling by that time.
Mm.
It's impressive. Kudos.
good.
Shout out to
Nice.
lead the way.
Here we go.
Amen. You just give a token towards it. Mm-hmm.
Marlena, you could give towards it since you're working on your doctorate.
Sir, you're ahead of me. Aren't you graduating this year?
May.
May.
Yeah.
Excellent. Man, we're gonna be
Well,
shouting. You this year,
I
Lord
pick-
willing, me next year we shout.
That's right. Right behind each other. Right
Well,
behind
I
each other.
picked up a PhD this past summer.
Here we go. Y'all. Hold on to your seats real quick.
No, I was out doing some gardening and I needed a post hole digger. And this PhD is what they call that. And I bought one for myself.
I don't even know what that is. I don't know, a postcode.
Hi guys,
thing.
I'm out, man. I'm out.
Oh, sorry. I'm saying hi to the people coming in. Hi, Mike Williams.
It's good
Hi,
to see the
Mary.
folks.
Good evening.
Mike Williams.
Tiff said, "That's what's up, Pat. If your church can do it, all churches should do it."
Yeah.
Hello, Nicole.
Yeah, I bet you there was a pastor that nudged Tiffany when she said that and said, "Look, don't be writing.
Even with a gun,
Let
not
your
even
mouth write
nudge.
checks that the rest of us can't cash."
Are you
now."
talking to Orange Pastor?
There's-
Orange Pastor?
I feel some citrus in my spirit. I'm not sure which church I'm talking about, but
Oh, right. Good evening.
Willing,
Your Upset
willing
Podcast family. I like the way that sounds. We're a family. and
podcast family.
That's right. That's right.
tonight. That's great.
Oh, that's good.
So,
So-
guys,
Go ahead.
I'm like, I'm really into like history and stuff now. The older I get, I mean, I just love history, right? Whatever it is, any kind of history. And so I was looking at the Little Rock Nine. Did y'all realize one of them was a Seventh-day Adventist?
Yes.
I did not know that. No.
Yes.
Yes. I think it's Terrence Roberts. I was like, what? He says, my name is Terrence Roberts and I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. And I was like, what? I was watching the, documentary live on one of the PBS shows. And I had to look him up. It was so amazing. So I was just proud about that. I wanted to share
Yeah,
that.
you're right. I looked it up. Terrence Roberts.
Mhm. And he just boldly said that, in the interview describing who he was. I was just
It's part of his
amazing.
identity.
It's nice.
Hmm.
Oh, cool.
As we get started, I just want to ask, there's a gentleman that I haven't known him for years. He was a kid when I joined the church, but he had been trying to reach me. And today the Spirit moved me to call him. He's living down in Alabama, but he used to be from Philadelphia. His name is Stephen Henry. He's the stepson of one of our great deacons from North Church. I don't know if you remember Deacon Fullwood, Charles, years ago. They were Deacons Akins and Deacons Fullwood, and they both moved down south. But I told him that I would mention his name and ask people to pray. He's going into surgery tomorrow, and so just remember Brother Stephen in prayer.
Okay.
Do a quick prayer right now so we can move through.
Why not?
Yep. God, we ask you to be with Brother Stephen as he goes into surgery. We ask for your Holy Spirit to be with family, be with the doctors as they perform their duties, but more than that, be by your side. We expect you to do what you do best by your will alone. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for that, Pat.
That was
Thank you.
great. Thanks for doing that. Thanks so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, I was I saw today that it's World Cancer Day. Did you guys know that? It was,
I did not.
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah. So just putting that out there. I know we had a show where we talked to a couple of breast cancer survivors, and so just to put that out there. And of course, we mentioned that it's Black History Month, all month long. It's 29 days this month, guys. This year, our leap year. So we're happy about our leap year and representing my HBCU, Oakwood University, today. But Pat was telling me about that there's a day we're supposed to rep our HBCU. I haven't seen the announcement yet, but I think we're Tuesday.
Yeah, on the 14th. On the 14th, they said. I just looked it up. On the 14th, Oakwood, we're supposed to wear ours.
Okay.
Okay.
HBCU proud. We'll remember to do that. Hello, Gene Smith. Greetings from South Carolina.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Gene,
nice.
make sure you tell your Senator Tim Scott that we said hello.
Oh, yeah, that's hilarious.
I love you. I
Go.
love you. You didn't hear when he said
Just
it?
makes you go,
I love you, Donald Trump. I love you.
All right, guys. Well,
I have one headline that,
go
that
ahead.
kind of
Go ahead.
stood out for me, and it was about the there were over 1,000 Black pastors who petitioned the administration
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
concerning the situation in the Middle East, and was actually calling for a ceasefire over there. But I just want to say, in conjunction with that, we need to keep the souls over there in our prayers, as so many people have been lost, not only in the Middle East, but in Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
A lot of families affected by that. And I think it's, it should be part of our prayers every day. I mean, no matter which side you fall on this political discussion, there's still lives being lost. I think one analyst said that they've calculated that there are 2 mothers dying every hour
Ooh.
And the
in
children,
Palestine.
man. Good night.
That's just unbelievable, but
It is.
it's true. So we need to keep everyone in prayer, especially the
Yeah.
families that have lost people. The 3 families that have lost the 3 lost the 3 soldiers.
Yeah.
soldiers in
the
Jordan.
soldiers
You know.
over there. Let's. I know for some people, they say, well, it's a lot. I'm here and they're over there. What can we do? You can pray
That's
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
Don't
and
underestimate the power of prayer.
keep them in mind. Also, I'm hoping during the month of February that we get to talk about, and this is me throwing out a subject now, and we'll see if we get a response. It's Black History Month, but I want to explore Blacks before America.
Hmm.
Mm.
We always talk about during Black History Month, the iconic leaders and slavery and all of that. But I think there is a wealth of information to learn about Blacks before America, because it seems like, especially for our children, all we have to say, oh, we were slaved and oh, we had a tough time and the slave ships and all. But we've had some remarkable Black achievements
Yep.
Mhm.
in other countries before America.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We need to learn more about that. I mean,
Yes.
I'm sure the typical iconic stuff we go over is good, but we need to talk about Blacks before America. We got some amazing things.
Agreed.
in-
Our history did not begin in chains.
Right.
That's right.
That's
Well
very-
said. Well
Yeah.
said. Well
Amen.
said.
You know,
Yeah, well,
I don't like GP. That's all.
He does have a pithy way of just with an economy of words capturing.
reality is-
Yeah.
Economy of words.
So we are here tonight to continue our discussion from last week. And I know we got someone special backstage.
Oh yeah.
We bring her
that's
out.
true.
I can't wait to bring her out. No stranger to many of us, but here she is right now. Let's bring her up top here.
Oh,
What song is this again? What song is?
He is trying to get you to sing, Michelle. You
He's
know that.
trying to. He's trying to.
This is Michelle Riley Jones. She's
Yep.
Woo-hoo!
part of our Capitol Hill Church in DC.
Mhm. Amen.
Amen.
Minister of Worship. What's the official title? I don't want to
Minister for Music and Worship.
Hey.
Amen.
worship. So share with us, Michelle, how long have you been in that role at Capitol Hill?
Don't remind me. Actually, I'm in my 21st year.
Yay. Amen.
So
Wow.
you started
I
when you were
can't believe it. I was
started
two.
when you were only 3 years old. Okay, two.
I was
Okay.
two. Yeah,
Yes,
two,
yes.
turning three.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So it's been 21 years.
Amen.
I started under Pastor Colin Brathwaite.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Well, I didn't know it was that long ago that Colin was
That
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. That is
21 years. Mm.
okay. Awesome. Now, before we dig into some of your responsibilities, we're just going to do a quick recap of what we talked about last week, just to make sure we all know where we're picking up. And we're so happy to have you join the dialogue. Some of our
Thank
viewers are saying, hey, we should bring on someone who does this week in and week out. And you were the perfect person to join us. So we're happy you're here.
Thank
So,
you.
Tally, you let us out last week. Go ahead and remind those who may be joining us for the first time what we talked about.
Okay, thank you guys. And we want to welcome everybody, of course, to the Upset Podcast, with the brightest minds, with the most able and articulate tongues to embrace topics that concern us all. And we speak now about a topic that we started last week. You know what it is, and it is the topic of worship. Let's take a really quick review, and we won't be long on this one because we really want to get into the dialogue. Worship can come to us. The word itself comes to us in two different forms. First, as a noun. The noun worship is derived from an Old English word, worthskip, or worthship, and it speaks about ascribing a state of worthiness to someone or something.
Mhm.
Anything that you give a sense of worth to, that is what worship would be from an Old English perspective. Now, that is the noun. The verb worship is slightly different, of course, and the verb worship in English is to engage in any kind of activity that honors or shows reverence to someone or something. You can worship your car. You can worship your house. You can worship your bank account, but it's to do any activity that honors or shows that that value to that one thing. Now, that's English, but let's go a little bit deeper. And we did this last week. The Greek proskuneo is a word, a compound word, which means towards, and to kiss means to kiss towards. All right. And proskuneo is actually derived from what a dog does to his master's hand. It is any action that demonstrates willing submissiveness or that recognizes the sovereignty or superiority of another over you. And in looking at those words, we recognized that there are a couple of scriptures that demonstrate that worship isn't something simply confined to a church. Worship isn't something that is confined to liturgy. We looked at Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. We made mention of the fact that the wise men came and they worshiped him based upon the text. There was no choir, there was no church service, nobody took an offering, nobody was in a pew, but there was worship. Matthew chapter 8 and verse 2 talks about a leper who didn't sing any songs. There was no praise team. Nobody ushered anybody to the front pew, but it says that he worshiped him by asking a request, because in asking that request, he was demonstrating that he respected the sovereignty of the Lord and he lowered himself to make that request. And of course, one of the texts we used was the passage in Mark where demon-possessed people come out of the tomb. And it says that the demons even worship, that when the demons saw who Christ was, it drove the man to his knees, and it says that he worshiped. So this is a person who was not following Christ, who is not a Christian per se, who's not a godly person, yet he submitted himself, he subjected himself. So that's what worship is. It is a noun that says to ascribe worth or value, and it is a verb that says demonstrating that you recognize that worth and value. Now we add to that the word praise, worship and praise. They're two separate things. Praise is normally found in two words in the Greek New Testament, aianos or epaianos, which means to laud or extol or to lift up someone through singing or through loud noise, typically singing, or a word that is typically, a word that is normally used is the word hymneo, from which we get the word hymn, to sing about what it is that you are lifting up, to artistically embrace something by showing value through the use of your art, singing or dancing or drawing or acting, whatever it is. Hymneo would embrace that. So worship can come in a variety of forms. Praise can come in a variety of forms. The issue is the praise recognized as such by the people who are doing it and participating in it, and received as such by the God to whom it is aimed? Before we get into our discussion, let's take a look, Tasha, at three different examples of praise and see whether or not we recognize them as such. Let's take a look at case number one, if you'd be so kind, Tosh.
Okay.
Look at them and tell them, walk it out.
Hey, now walk it out. Walk it out. Now walk it out.
Now, this is a church service, and they're talking about godly things. Do you see this as praise? All right, let's go to the next one, Tasha, and ask ourselves, Marlene is smiling because Marlene says, I like that kind of thing, okay? Do you see this as praise? All right, let's take a look at the next one.
Okay. All right. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
We tired of walking it out
So
now.
we'll elect a new
Praise
communications director if we have to, but you know,
All right, we got one more for you.
we can end it right there and come back. We don't even have to go back to the presentation. But the question is, did you see praise in those things? What you know, we turn this back over now to the purest of hearts and the brightest of minds, the panel of the Upset podcast. What say you one? What say you all? Were we looking at praise in those three exhibitions?
Michelle, no, I was playing.
You know,
And there was silence in heaven for the space.
Space of a half an hour.
there are just a lot of cultural differences in worship. So when I say cultural, I'm not necessarily talking racial. I'm just saying how we worship, what is deemed acceptable. I would say, I think it was the second one and the third one. Those weren't necessarily worship services in the context of how we think of coming to worship. Those were concerts.
Yeah.
But
So
were they praise?
I believe that they were a form of praise.
Okay.
Now, with that work in my context, that would be
Now,
praise.
I was hoping to get someone out on one of those limbs, because one of them was Justin Timberlake singing on Saturday Night Live his latest song, which is talking not at all about God, but talking about a sanctified call of the bootiness. And it had nothing to do, but it was all the right words. And we lost Pat. I mean, and so and the reason I showed it is because it's not simply right or wrong. As Michelle said, it's a matter of culture, how it's perceived, how it's intended, how you view the individual, what you think of them. And it becomes a very challenging thing. And if we can get people to stop simply thinking that they have to pronounce good or bad, right or wrong, holy or profane, and to try to simply understand what people are trying to do and what the setting is, I think we will do better. With that being said, I yield the floor back to the senator from Capitol Hill, and we'll let her instruct us on what praise and worship is all
I'll
about.
just say also for the Justin Timberlake piece, if he is not singing about God and that was not his intent when he wrote the lyrics for that song, then why would we feel that is, just the right song that we need to bring and introduce in our worship context? We have to listen. We have to look at the words. I mean, I am constantly pulling up the lyrics to songs because they're not always what they seem at face value. So you have to do your due diligence. And if he's not singing about God, then why would we choose that particular song to bring into our worship context out of all of the songs, that are available? So sometimes it's judgment. What's the best call for our worship, context?
Maestro Michelle, do you remember I Believe I Could Fly?
Yes.
It was like, I mean, it took over all of our, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I do agree with you on that. I think that even though it had a good message behind it,
it's R. Kelly. Yeah.
Right. It's R. Kelly.
Who did it over? Was it Yolanda Adams? Did she redo it? That's why
somebody redid it. Somebody redid it.
I think that's why.
And then I remember in the 80s or so, BB and CeCe Winans used to have some great songs, but but you didn't hear a lot of God, or you didn't hear a lot of Jesus, or whichever in it. But when I look at all three of them, it's, I go back to what you said, Michelle. I think there's a cultural aspect to it, because even though we were looking at it from a concert standpoint, I still look at concerts as some type of spiritual entity.
Absolutely.
I've seen you at concerts where they've made calls after concerts and people were like, listen, I'm gonna give my life to Jesus Christ. So I think that, yes, there is a cultural attachment to it, but then we just still have to be careful. We just have to be careful. I don't know.
Well, and then one thing that Tally said that's very important, that there's no right or wrong, if that is their culture. We must be certain to not make praise the enemy. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, we've been all raised in a church where our praise was very silent, and that was considered holy, and anything outside was deemed unholy or inappropriate. And so when that praise and worship movement came through churches, like late 20th century, 1970, 80, whatever, when the praise and worship movement started, most churches didn't agree with that, or they didn't understand it, because then you had praise teams to start singing, and they were used to just a songster singing hymns. But now, you start singing other songs. It doesn't make it wrong. So don't make praise team the enemy of what you know to be in the past from what you were comfortable with, because those songs still give praise to God, right? And most musicians and even pastors, we screen songs. So if it's anything that's inappropriate, well, there's a discussion about that song. I remember on my praise team, we used to sing "I've Got My Mind Made Up" by
Donnie McClurkin.
Donnie McClurkin, right? And
Mhm.
somebody at church said, "Well, that kind of reminds me of the clubs when we were in Jamaica." I said, "What?" And the
Yeah,
pastor said,
it has
"Well,
calypso
in
flavor.
respect, don't sing that." I was like, "What?" Because we love that song. I got my mind
Mhm.
made up, so we had to stop singing that, you know. But so I just want to make sure that because things are different, that we don't demonize or criticize them to be inappropriate, because we like I'm a musical pastor, so I know I'm not going to sing certain things in church because we know that's just not going to go well. It's not going to be accepted, right? So you know what to present before the Lord, and GP, I know you and Pat, and Tally, most of all of us are involved with music, and so as was stated, the pastors are the head worship leaders, so we're responsible for the music, and
Can I
so we
ask?
want, yeah.
I'm sorry, Marley. I want to ask Michelle something. If she's been doing this for 21 years, did they have praise team when you began, or you made the transition?
So they had just started a praise team
Okay,
maybe
okay,
a year before I
okay,
began, but it was in turmoil.
okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was.
Can
It
you
was.
can you just
It was
can you expand upon that turmoil thing?
well, you know, everyone that can sing
Uh-oh.
does not a praise leader make.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Okay, good. No,
So,
this is
and
good.
I'm not knocking singers.
No.
Everyone
Oh,
that can sing does not a praise leader make. Every pastor is sometimes uncomfortable when they see certain things um, coming from the song leader. Sometimes they're not comfortable pulling that person up if it's not the most appropriate thing for their house. So I always tell my team, we have to brighten the corner where we are. We can't look over the fence and see what's going on in this church and that church and on this video and that video. Where has God called us? He's called me to Capitol Hill. So what might work in Capitol Hill, although there are general guidelines or standards, if you will, but what might be appropriate at Capitol Hill might not work in some other church context. So
Right.
we have to be, constantly listening for the voice, of the Lord. One of the first, I tell people the Lord picked me up out of the pew. I've been singing all my life. I've been singing in outside groups, but at the time, I was not doing anything in church. I was coming to church, but wasn't really doing anything. So he picked me up out of the pew. And I'll never forget that call that Friday afternoon. Someone that I don't even know from the nominating committee called me. I didn't even know who I was talking to. And I said, did you mean to call me? Didn't you mean to call this person? And they told me they needed my answer right away because they were going into committee and they needed to make a decision. And I said, well, then I'll have to say no, but otherwise I would like for you to give me an opportunity to pray on this. And literally I gave the Lord a whole list of people, and I had a dialogue with him about those people, and he showed me why he chose me and called me. And then you have to make a decision. Are you going to follow the Lord and accept his calling, or are you going to run and do something else? So thankfully I decided to accept the calling, but I was always clear from day one that the pastor is the worship leader.
okay.
Hmm.
Clear. So I don't have those issues in our pastor minister of music context. He's the worship leader. My job is to facilitate the worship planning, to facilitate the worship resources. That's my role, there, to make sure that they understand and know his vision for the congregation, to make sure that our team is involved outside of music. You can't come before the people and all are the two people that stand to your right and left, on the praise team or in the choir or, or sitting at the instruments. You have to be involved in ministry so that you can understand what's going on in the life of the congregation and how we bring music to that, to inspire and to uplift people.
Let me ask you a question, Michelle. In days gone by, much of the music that was sung in churches either focused away from the self. Our God is an awesome God. Holy, holy, holy. My faith looks up to thee. Or it focused on the collection, the community. What a friend we have in Jesus. We are marching to Zion. But now a lot of the praise songs tend to focus inward on my own experience and the blessing that I need. I'm going to get the blessing of Abraham, and he's going to give me double for my trouble. And I mean, it seems that there is a refocusing on today's praise songs towards the self rather than towards community and towards the great other who is God. Have you noticed that? And if you notice it, what do you think about it?
I definitely have noticed that. And, it's no different. Times change, music changes. One of the ways that we try to keep people focused, if you will, on what it's really all about is I don't really use the term praise and worship in our service. I use congregational song. So we have a choir that is there, much like the preacher, to deliver the word via song. And then we have the role of what people call the praise team to facilitate congregational song. That also helps us get away from this, just focus on, should we sing this type of song for praise and worship? Can't sing a hymn for praise and worship, And we do it all in our congregational singing. It allows us to bring all of the types of songs to bear within the worship experience. So sometimes it's how you talk about things. It's the vernacular that you use. And as you're selecting songs, those are just things that you have to be mindful, because those songs that focus on self, they sound good. They make us feel good.
Make you feel good, yeah.
So you have to kind of, shift and have a balance. It's not the worst thing to have maybe one of those songs in your set, but you have to have an appropriate balance, because the whole focus of congregational singing is on God, is on his worship, as you mentioned earlier, and then what is going to be our response.
Amen.
To that.
Maestro Michelle, you mentioned the variety of music at Capitol Hill, and you all don't just do it, but you do everything well. So can you talk about how our churches should invest in the arts and music ministry? Because a lot of our churches sometimes are stingy. We don't want to invest to get quality for what we're doing. So can you kind of elaborate on that? You don't have to talk about numbers and dollars, but just encourage our constituents.
Well, we've been on a journey. So I've been involved directly in this journey for 21 years, but it certainly did not start, with me. And, every church is going to be at a different stage. We don't always have the ability to determine what our budgets are going to be. Mine has certainly ebbed and flowed and, changed over the years. And so, you have to start with what you have. You have to trust God that he is going to bring whatever additional resources you may or may not need. The people involved have to understand that this is serious business. We don't just get up and do anything haphazard. We have to rehearse. We have to practice. We have to know what we're doing. We have to read our Bibles. We should be coming to Sabbath school. We should be involved in ministry throughout the church. So if you stress those types of things, the Lord and the angels will come and sing alongside of you. So we didn't know what we were doing really when we begin to really formalize our praise team, if you will. I thought it was just get a whole bunch of nice songs. I think I had a CD set of 5 CDs full of songs, and that's what we worked from week to week. And I thought it was just all about the song. Just pick a song and go for it. But it took us a while to really understand it's really about the Lord speaking to us and speaking through us through song and helping us make those selections that we're going to deliver the word, if you will, that he has for the congregation in that moment. So it is, and I'll say this too about Capitol Hill. We don't have a plethora, if you will, of the artists or professional, singers. So
Really?
no. So we were starting with scratch, starting with what we had and building from that. I have been in the congregation sometimes, and I've heard someone singing over there, and I'll make a mental note. I'm going to go and introduce myself to that person. That person not only has a lovely voice, but doesn't seem to be held back from praising when it's time for corporate praise. And I'll go and talk to that person. I have encouraged them to become a member of our choir or our praise team. The Lord has directed me to individuals who are now leading praise and worship at Capitol Hill. But if we were to walk into some other context, they might not see that individual as, the Kim Burrells or, so it's, you have to brighten the corner where you are. And
she didn't say Kim Burrell, though. Did she just say Kim Burrell?
She did say Kim Burrell. I heard it.
She didn't say that.
I'm
singing right now.
Tiffany Brissett would say, she said what she said.
Kim, we love her. Oh my goodness.
Put on that mask.
Let that mask work for you.
Let that mask work for you. So, you have to, it can be frustrating if you're looking over here and seeing what they have and, what they don't have. We didn't always have enough mics, I've been blessed. Our musician team has been on board with us since I started. So they've been there 21 years.
Wow.
And I don't take that for granted.
Are they all members, or are they people that you've hired?
They're all people that I've hired. My only member, we just brought on a young guy from Oakwood, Azriel Davis. He is. So he's going to be one of our organists there. Our choir directors are all members of the church, but not our musician team. When I came to Capitol Hill, I think they had a gospel choir and another choir at the time. And then every Sabbath, whatever musician team was playing for a particular choir was the team for the service. So it was just all over the place. So it took me about 8 months or so to kind of, evaluate and decide, I need to have a team that's central for our worship resource there. And we found that it has just been a journey. Sometimes I just turn around and look back and, I can see how far the Lord has brought us, but then I can, then there are other weeks I'm sitting in church like, oh my goodness. Yeah. It's day by day. It's moment by moment.
I told you, Tally, she cusses.
Leadership.
I told you, Tally.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the practical aspects of putting a praise team together and musicians, because that's where a lot of the controversy regarding music ministry, praise teams surfaces in terms of, for instance, etiquette, for instance. You mentioned how in selecting members of the praise team, you witnessed someone who was already exhibiting some of the qualities you thought would be good. Do you all have, and I don't necessarily want this to be about Capitol Hill, but in general, should there be a process for the selection of praise team members, or even the musicians? You mentioned that they're not necessarily members, but that they have to meet certain requirements, where there's certain standards that the church had before inviting these people to be a part.
Absolutely. And I don't know why, when it comes to church, we think all of that should just go out the window. Now, there's a way to do that. For our praise team members, we use the word placement, but it's an audition.
Okay.
We want to know, vocally what they sound like, what they feel comfortable doing. Can they read music?
Right.
Can they pick up parts, quickly? The praise team doesn't have 10 rehearsals like the choir might have. So sometimes you need to get some music, and in 2 days you need to be able to turn that thing around. Or sometimes we're in the worship service and Pastor Peeler will call out a particular song or motion,
On the fly,
on the fly. So what do you do in those circumstances? How quickly can you learn? So those are some of the things that we talk about. So we do have an audition for placement, is how we call it for our choirs. Because we need to understand, the directors need to understand what they're working with. Absolutely. For the musicians, the same thing. We bring them in for an audition. I have even gone to, like, my current MD. I went to a couple of the services that he.
You might want to clarify what an MD is. People think you went to the doctor.
Oh, my music director. So my music director is on our keyboards. He does strings and there. So I even went to several services where he was functioning in the role that I wanted to bring him on at Capitol Hill, because every musician is not a leader. They can't lead the band, or they don't understand, they're not sensitive. They're not listening to the pastor, so they don't know where to go. We're praying and they're jamming, so it's, sometimes you have to step back and you have to do more observation, take your time with it, and ask the Lord to really lead you.
Let me ask you a question about the performative nature of of music. I mean, I am not opposed to drama. I shared last week that part of worship involves drama, but there seems to be at times a level of drama that becomes stereotypical and maybe even trite. I mean, everybody gets up when they start talking, they sound like they are from deep south of Texas. I want all y'all to stand up all up in this here building, and then you gotta look like something stink in the building, like we just want to bless them today. I mean, so the level of performative, is that something that you practice? How important is it? Do you have to rein it in at times?
Absolutely. All of that. So we are very intentional about our worship planning. I meet with our pastoral team every Wednesday. So don't try to reach me at 3:00 on Wednesdays, because I'm likely going to be in a meeting with them, and we talk about the past worship service, and we talk about the plans for the upcoming worship service. But you have to talk through every element of the worship service. What is the purpose of that element? Who's going to be doing it? Are they the right person? You may have the person that gets up to do the welcome and they decide they're going to give you a 15-minute poem. Well, no, that's not what we asked you to do. We asked you to give the welcome. You may have the person leading the hymn. You can give, segues but we don't need a sermon. We don't need you to repeat the announcements. We don't need you to repeat what someone else said. We need you to introduce the hymn and lead the congregation in song. If you're the song leader, we don't need a 10-minute transition between every song. But that's not going to be something unless we tell you, and unless you're intentional about planning those transitions in song. When you get up to do the prayer, we're not asking you to recount everything that the pastor said earlier in the service. So it's not just the singers It's everyone in the worship service. They have a role. What is that role? What is it that we're asking you to do? And we try to, just be very intentional about that element. We have 10 minutes for praise and worship.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised what can happen. And we've done one song. So it's not, it's not about whether we got 30 minutes or 20 minutes. We have up to 10 minutes if we want to just look at, time. And a lot can, the Lord can move on one song. He doesn't need all of that. So it's God, where do you want me? What is it that you want me to do? And how can I facilitate the people lifting their voice in song?
Can I get in trouble, folks, and ask this question? And that is, you are the minister of music and worship, correct? Praise and worship or something. So you're a minister. The ministers are not voted in by the congregation, yet the church feels that they should vote in, quote, the minister of music and other ministers. Are you staff, church staff, or are you a church elected officers? And which do you think it should be? And should it be stipended? Paul speaks about the ox that treads out the corn shouldn't be muzzled.
Oh boy, that's a whole different. It should be a paid position. I'm not paid.
What?
No. Mm-mm.
I am aghast.
I am
shocked.
I was selected by the pastor. And then so the pastor selects that person, and then the church votes it in. So it's not a committee vote, so to speak.
So if we believe in the Levitical role of musicians,
here we go.
Why do you think the Seventh-day Adventist Church shies away from compensating our Levites properly?
You know what? I'm just going to be honest with you. That wasn't, I had a profession. That was not what was driving or what would motivate, me. And that's
that's not what he asked, Michelle.
I know. That's a whole different conversation. That's a whole
that's the one we want to have.
I can't change what happens at the conference level. I can't change.
That's the local church level. Why is it?
Yeah.
I mean, Capitol Hill is a church with well over $1 million and almost $2 million in revenue. And the minister of music is a pivotal. You're not just a minister of music. You're the minister of. Give me that title again.
Minister for music and worship.
Music and worship.
Yeah.
But yet the church has not seen that the value in supporting that level of involvement and ministry.
I disagree with that when it comes to me. The person before me, there was some discussion around, as I understand it anyway, pay for that position. I just elected not to do that because there were so many needs that I had on my team at the time when I came on board. I needed a strong, MD. I needed a full team.
Are your musicians stipended?
Oh yes. All of our musicians are paid.
The musicians are stipended.
Our choir directors are paid as well.
The musicians are stipended, but the person who oversees and coordinates all of it is not.
Again, when I came on board, I elected to have those funds go to our musicians. So that was 21 years ago.
You're being very gracious. So the answer is no. Am I correct?
I don't think it's just an easy no. Do I feel that the position should be compensated? Sure. Is that something that drives me? No.
Now that I get. I mean, I know that your heart is in the right place, but I'm simply saying that as a minister of the gospel,
sure.
I would think it robbery for a person who serves at the altar to not be able to be supported by the altar at which they serve, and I
Mhm.
just think that
Mhm.
it should be something to be considered. Let me
Sure.
see. You know,
And
And from a
pacing.
before you
Go ahead.
dive in, I've always
Emil,
Go ahead.
I've always thought that if we treated our Adventist musicians like pastors and give them jobs through conferences to be paid from the tithe, there wouldn't be such a desert musically. Like we have our Adventist ghettos with lots of talent, and you get a job in Iowa to get a job somewhere at some Adventist
Mhm.
hospital, and
Mhm.
the local church is struggling musically. But if
Right.
we had that mindset and willingness, it's not that we don't have it. I don't know why we don't do it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Your guess is as good as mine. You know, should the musicians be paid? Absolutely. You know, but there are a lot of different factors that come into play here, and then it that really has to be addressed at the local level. Someone may not have the budget that I have. You know, I might not have the budget that someone else has. So, you know, it's really, you know, again, I go back to that corner that you're on. What is it that God is calling you to do? I believe that He will bring, you know, the resources, you know, that are needed. It may take a little longer in some cases, but it will happen.
And Michelle, I just want to, because the thing that I wanted to say is, you know, what about churches that don't have the resources to do that, and then we get into the point where then the singers want to be paid, and it becomes very challenging.
Right.
And so, how do you handle that when everyone now wants to be paid? And I mean, I know we hire our musicians,
Mhm.
but how do we handle having to pay the whole praise team?
Well, I'm not in that situation. We don't pay our praise team. We pay our instrumentalists and we pay our choir directors, from the children's choir director, our gospel choir, and our chorale. They are all paid
That's awesome.
a stipend.
Mm. Yeah, and I
Michelle,
don't,
can can you hear
I'm
me
sorry,
now?
Charles. Go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you,
Oh,
Chuck.
great.
Yeah.
He's trying.
I had
Charles
to
is
go
back.
out
Charles is
and
here.
get some
That's going to bring on a whole new thing now. Now that Charles.
The question I have for you, Michelle, is the praise team and the choir. What or how do you plan or integrate the effectiveness of the praise team versus the choir? Now, the choir is not the praise team. So when you
But they
plan,
can be.
they can be. In
Absolutely.
your church, it can be.
A choir can lead congregational song if that is how you choose to use them.
Okay. Okay, great. Is there a role that the choir has
Mhm.
that the praise team does not?
That's right. So in the way that we look at choirs and praise teams, our choirs are much again like the preacher, or that the person that is called to bring a word forth. It's just that the choir is doing that via song. The praise team, on the other hand, is called to facilitate congregational song, to help engage the congregation, inspire the congregation by through the use of music. And it's one of the reasons why I don't have our praise teams do special music. We don't do praise and worship concerts, and I'm not knocking anyone that does that, but it's because I'm trying not to confuse the roles of those two groups. So you remember years ago, we called it song service then, it's called praise worship now, and some people are really hung up. I want to go back to song service. It's all the same thing. You're facilitating congregational song. It's why we use that language. The praise team facilitates congregational song. The choir proclaims the word of God through music.
Oh, that's well said. I like.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's well said.
So we wanted to take we were talking about the paying of various service leaders and someone, and I think this is the argument that we always hear. So Don is asking, are we prepared to go down the rabbit hole? What about the elders, paying the deacons and the deaconesses? Should every ministry leader be paid? And I know we've heard that question come from leaders, where does ministry start, and
No.
position to be in? Like, how do we differentiate who gets paid and who doesn't? That becomes a discussion, and that's often why it's kind of left on the table. Go ahead, Tally, what were you gonna say?
No, no, Tally, not what Tally's gonna say. So, please,
no, but it's to kind of
ushered him right into it. Go ahead.
I am desirous of being respectful to the comments of our listeners and our upset family. It is not a rabbit hole. I mean, and that is one of the problems that the Adventist Fellowship has, that somehow or another, to either compensate or support people, takes us down the rabbit hole.
That's right.
God loves a cheerful giver. If we had enough, then you give to the usher. But what you do is you are compensating and you are supporting individuals based upon a level of preparation that is involved in what they do. Now, to be an usher takes work, but it doesn't take a whole lot of preparation. I mean, I haven't seen too many ushers, go home and say, let me practice. I got to stand like this. Am I standing straight? It's, but when you are pulling together music and rehearsing it, that takes time and preparation. When you are practicing and you're a musician, it takes time and preparation. Ministers have to prepare. Folks don't know that it takes anywhere from 12 to 20 hours a week to prepare a sermon. And so you're simply saying we respect the investment of time and preparation, and we are cheerfully extending support to you so that you can do better what you're doing well. It is not a rabbit hole. It is a corridor of gratitude.
That's right.
And
you also start where you can. You start where you can, and through time and just letting the Lord lead, you can grow.
Maestro, can I ask you this question? Do you have a dress code?
Yes, you have to have your jeans torn in the correct place.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yes, we do. And it's something that is written. We share it with people. And not everyone loves it. We've had to ask someone not to minister a particular service because they weren't dressed appropriately, so and then there's the whole discussion around jewelry, so we're dealing with that now, and how do we navigate that. In our context, we don't want you coming in with the hoops, but if you have a little stud, we allow you to minister. Now that in other churches that would be blasphemy. You couldn't do that, but so it is something that we discuss with people. We will pull you aside. We will have that conversation.
So is it you, Michelle? Are you the person responsible for people?
The way that I lead is I expect my choir directors and our team leaders, I expect them to be leaders as well. So they should be quite comfortable, and they are, certainly able to have those discussions. If it's something really dicey, someone is, going off and they want to pull me in, sure, but they should be viewed as leaders by the respective entities that they lead.
I remember once having a church where, dress was an issue. Short skirts, colorful makeup, big earrings, and then the women would come out.
Yes.
Tell you ridiculous.
Michelle, I have one more for you. I'm sorry, Michelle. Do your choir members have to be good and regular standing in your choirs?
So our choir members don't have to be members of Capitol Hill. Is that what
Okay.
you're asking?
Yes, that's
They
really
don't
what
have
I'm
to
asking.
be. They don't have to be
Okay.
members.
Okay.
Our praise teams, our preference is that they are members.
Okay.
And again, that is because we are asking them to really engage outside of just that act of singing and leading song. You should be, a part of what's going on in church life so that you understand the issues that people, are facing. So we can take that knowledge and understanding and use music to, hopefully minister, to them.
Upsetters, can I just ask her this one more question? If does Dr. Peeler, does he give you latitude, longitude to be able to, if you feel the spirit, you can take it another place? Does he give you that?
But that comes with relationship.
Yeah.
Trust. That is not, that is not something that, they just give it to you because you have a title or
Right.
you have a position in the church. That comes with, and only the pastor can decide when he or she is comfortable, with that. So
Right.
like I said, we meet every week. I have a close relationship with him. I understand, his heart. He understands me. We trust each other, and it's just a great ministry relationship.
That's
Yeah, Maestro Michelle, I've attended the Hampton Ministers Conference and Music Guild.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about expanding our horizons when it comes to connecting with other either denominations or faith traditions and what we can learn from them and not being afraid of compromising our beliefs or mingling with the world?
I spent, I think it was maybe 7 years or so working with one of the first African-American lectionary teams, and we wrote an online lectionary, ecumenical lectionary. I was one of the co-leaders for the worship division, writing worship resources, identifying people who could write resources. So these were pastors, people from academia, also the music and worship side. And we don't always have the best reputation. So sometimes when people find out you're Seventh-day Adventist, they're like,
Wow.
we have to get outside of our bubbles. We have to connect with people. That is a great conference, the Hampton Ministers Conference. It really is. It's great for for preachers and the musicians alike. And we would be surprised what we can learn, and then also what we can share. You're only going to be able to have influence as you connect with people. If you're stuck in your church building, only talking to the 10 people you went to school with, you are not going to have any influence. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So we have to get out into the community and both learn from and share with the community.
Amen.
Yes, thank you. Now,
Michelle,
I know before you ask your question, Charles, I just want to put it out to our audience. I know somebody was hinting about a part 3. I don't think we could do a part 3. So if there's some pressing questions you want us to tackle before we end tonight, put them in the chat while Charles is asking his question. Go ahead, Charles. Sorry.
Well, Michelle, I just wanted to ask you, in the preparation process and
Yes.
review process of your music, is there any time a discussion comes into play about syncopation, style of music, jazz style versus R&B? I mean, because we know quite naturally, and referring back to the clips that were shown earlier.
Mhm.
A lot of praise teams have adapted a certain musical style,
Mhm.
Come on now.
contemporary
Come on now.
style. Are there any limitations or guidelines about those styles? And how do you determine what's appropriate and not appropriate in a house of worship? Because I've
Mhm.
heard people say, oh, that praise team is great, for the afternoon program or in the gym or
Mhm.
whatever, but it's not appropriate for Sabbath morning.
Mhm.
So how do you gauge that?
Well, I think first we have to not be afraid of believing that and saying that and sticking, by that. There's nothing wrong with saying this music is more appropriate for this setting, this style of music. We could be a little bit more flexible in this type of environment. We tend to kind of stay away from, if I can say that, a lot of jazzy chords. I mean, and we even get down in the weeds at Capitol Hill. I was just looking at it. I have a whole write-up where I talk about musical accompaniment by the instrumentalists in worship. What should be happening, when the pastor is praying, from maybe what instrument in our context should be leading, what style of music we should be, listening to. When I first took over, we had a very competent bass player, but during prayer, he would just be going for it. And I'm sitting in like, oh my God, it was just too much. So, a lot of this stuff, it's not that, we know when we feel uncomfortable, we know when others are feeling, comfortable. We serve a creative God that, he puts a lot of resources at our disposal. I think we can, if there's something that brings discomfort, I guess I'll use that word, musically, then, we ought to step back and take another look at it. I don't want to be reminded in worship, between the sheets. So, I wouldn't expect you, if you're playing a song to undergird the pastor speak, I wouldn't expect to then hear you go into between the sheets. It's just inappropriate.
So what'd you say?
I'm sorry, just bringing up a particular song.
She said between the sheets.
Yeah,
she's talking
You mean
about
the Isley?
No, she's talking about that one page.
Oh, I thought you meant the Isley Brothers song.
No, yeah, between.
We didn't change topics.
Yeah.
Between Malachi and Matthew.
I'm trying not to, we don't need to introduce R&B, in the worship service. It's good if a pastor is using it to illustrate a point, but when we're doing congregational song, there's no need. The Lord has given us so much music out here that we don't, we don't need.
So Walk It Out was wrong?
Yeah, I think that there's so much subjectivity. It's a gray area from my perspective, because you'll have an artist like Kirk Whalum.
Yes.
Who, if you've ever been to any of his concerts, I've been to a couple of his concerts and they were very worshipful experiences.
I'm not suggesting that the music can't be worshipful, but we're talking a worship service. We're talking a concert setting. The settings are different. The expectations of those attending are different. The leadership of the people involved is very different than at a concert setting. And I think some of the problem is we're looking at concerts and then trying to bring that in the service. Now, if you look at that clip that you played of the Walk It Out, a lot of discussion, about that, online. But a number of people, I understand, gave their heart to the Lord. So it's possible that in that context, the Lord moved.
He moved in that.
You know,
Well,
I don't, you know, sometimes you can't stand back and just look at a clip, and you know, it's easy to do that. But in our worship context, that would not work. Now, has Pastor Peeler, you know, joked while he's preaching and, you know, called out as a, you know, a song that we all know, or, you know, sure, that, you know, that happens. But when you talk about coming together to worship, that wouldn't work in our context. But I've tried not to look at a small clip of the Walk It Out and make some grandiose, you know, judgment on that.
Michelle, I was going to ask you, because I know you talked about meeting with the pastor and having a good relationship with the whole ministry team. So that brings up this question here: who determines what is appropriate? Is that the pastor's call? Is that the worship leader's call? Who makes the call of appropriateness?
So that really is a connection between the pastor and myself, and then that trickles down to the directors on my team. Like I said, you know, we are all bringing our perspectives, our backgrounds, you know, to this. Sometimes we might get it wrong, you know, but I think if we are in dialogue with each other, if we understand each other's heart, we understand where the Lord wants to take our congregation, we'll get it right more times than we will get it wrong. So it's pastor, me, and then trickles down to.
Well, I got you. So no C major diminished seventh chords. We got that part. But now somebody, you know, you're singing and it gets very spiritual, and somebody breaks out and starts speaking in tongues. What does Maestro Michelle do, as your new name now is?
That is so funny. We've never had that happen, you know, and again,
I'll be there next week.
You'll be there next week. Okay. Well, I won't say that. We've never had that happen from anyone who is who's involved in facilitating the worship. Someone in the congregation might do that, but that and then, you know, in what context are we talking about? Because you know, our understanding is it's a language or a language that would be understood by someone else, and not. I guess the Bible uses the term. Does the Bible use the term unknown language?
It's actually the word unknown is actually an inserted word.
Got you.
It's an implied word, but it's not actually in the text. You know,
my understanding of the tongues is that it is a language that would be that is understood by someone else who might speak that language. So it's not something that is uttered and no one knows what you're saying, let alone you would have to have an interpreter there. So that's never happened from the pulpit. It has happened from a congregate.
Got you.
And since it's Black History Month, our history, what we've been through, it kind of bleeds into how we worship and how we express ourselves. So when we talk about tongues or shouting, many Adventists, Black Adventists, are opposed to that type of expression in worship, even if it's celebrating something good or good news of the gospel. What word of counsel would you give to us? Because a lot of us are in different places in that argument.
Well, there are many different ways to praise. I was thinking about this earlier today, and one of those is to shout, if you will, hallelujah, to lift our voices, to be boisterous, if you will, in our expression, of praise. We may lift our hands. Some people are uncomfortable with that. We may bow down. I've seen people, bow down in the middle of singing, and other people looking like, what is he or she, what are they doing? Because this is not the time, to bow down. So there are many different ways that we can express our worship and our praise to God, and lifting our voices, raising our hands. So I think your last podcast, you talked about the appropriateness of even clapping, in worship. Are you praising the person, or what are you doing with with clapping, but all of those are forms of expression in worship and praise to God.
Michelle, I think with this discussion, this and many other discussions I've had about the diverse approach to praise and worship, I think that, we've got to come to the conclusion that we have to be open-minded. We should be, as one listener, one of our listeners said, read your congregation. I think that what we need to understand is not to rush to what is good, what is bad. We can determine what's appropriate for a given congregation, but we often go down that pike of being judgmental about a person's style of music. Who are we to judge that a person's not getting a blessing from one song that may be very syncopated, a lot of clapping, versus another song that is very quiet and meditative, that sort of thing. We need to be, and when I say we, I'm talking specifically about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We just need to chill. We need to open up our minds and allow
Let's chill.
folk,
Settle down.
Yeah, let folk have their connection with God when it
That's
comes
what I
to
wanna do.
music.
But
And if we're not doing that, then we are being judgmental. We can take away a person's blessing by saying, well, we don't play that kind of music at this church. Okay. We just need to be careful. I think we just get so judgmental about those things. Did you hear him play that song? That sounded very jazzy. Okay. So what is jazzy? Okay. And your point is?
I think the key is as leaders, we have to be very intentional. We have to be very prayerful, because they're just, we're being bombarded with so many, different belief systems, many different ways of doing things. We have to be very, prayerful, constant dialogue with our pastor, constant dialogue with each other, trying to understand what the needs of the congregation are, so that we can have a musical offering that's well-rounded, that allows us to meet the needs of kind of the various age ranges, within the congregation. Because, music for a lot of people is subjective. Did they sing my song? And if you didn't sing my song, then now I'm mad. Or I didn't know the words to that song, so now sit the praise team down because I didn't know the words. But the question is, you might not know. There was a time when we didn't know the words to Blessed Assurance. There was a time you had to learn that. You had to start singing it. So there's a relationship, there's a role that the congregation has when we come together for corporate worship. You have to let go all of this, my preference, what I want, what did they sing my song or not. And you said, we're here as a corporate body. God has called us together to give worship and praise to him. And that's what we're going to do. And guess what? I've been in so many different settings where I didn't know a particular song, but at some point, something clicked. I could hum along with, a bar or phrase, or I got the chorus or something, or I was still blessed, by it. So
Watermelon doesn't work anymore. I used to direct the choir. I'd be like, just say watermelon.
I think sometimes the congregation is sometimes they're sitting back, because you didn't sing their song, but they should understand we're here as a group, for corporate, and it's for corporate worship. It's not individual worship.
I just have one last question to ask you, Michelle, because you kind of interwove this idea in your comments. Is there ever, or has there ever been a need for you to get feedback from a congregation in terms of preference and comfort level? Has that ever been done, or is there a need to be?
I think there's definitely a need, and I think we don't have to view that as something that's negative. I sit with and chat with our seniors all the time, and talk with them about music. I chat with our young adults all the time about music, and don't assume that because someone is a young adult that they like all of the boom-de boom stuff out there. We got a lot of them that just want to sing hymns. So you have, if you're not connected with the people in your car, you're going to be lost. You just be out here doing, doing whatever. So it is a process. We, by Tuesday of every week, as our leaders have, they have prayed and God has directed them, they are turning in their music selections for the service. We take we step back and take a look at that from the big picture, level, make sure they're on point. And sometimes I have to go back and say, this particular song is a great song, but that might be better in this spot in the worship service than in this spot. So it's not a one and done. It's not routine, even though we do it every week. We have to be intentional. We have to be prayerful. We have to be looking at that thing, every week. Say, God, because
so
you
Michelle,
can get.
I want to thank you for being so granular and breaking it down. This is not an easy task. Some folk think you come to church and folk just get up and sing whatever, and there's no plan, no preparation, but it's good for us to hear from you that there is a specific process and protocol.
Absolutely.
And that's important. So thank you for going.
But it's not just for the singers, it's for the elders in the service. It's for those who are going to be getting up to give the greeting. It's for all of the worship participants. We all have to be in sync. We all have to be, prayerful, so that when it's time for us to minister, that we're in the right heads.
I'm glad you mentioned everybody, because I do remember many church services where one of the local elders would get up and lead the congregational hymn, and they cannot sing.
Yeah.
And we're motioning to the sound guys, you could just turn his mic down because they were off key, wrong words. It's like it was terrible, But I said to myself, did they ask if this elder could sing before they asked him to lead the?
Well, not everyone should do the intercessory prayer.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. That's true. I would close with Carrie Williams's regards, where she says syncopation gets a bad rap. It's been a part of music since Adam had a heartbeat. Ladies and gentlemen,
Absolutely.
This announcement is brought to you by the Zimbalist drum system. If you don't have syncopation, you don't have worship.
Ooh, I remember when we didn't have the drum, our drum cage. Oh my goodness! Every week, you're just trying to balance that, that volume and. So now we have the drum cage, and we work very closely with AV, each week to kind of have a balance there, because sometimes it can get a little loud.
Yeah.
And
yes,
that can be counterproductive.
Absolutely.
I think we lost Tasha just now.
Yeah, she was upset at what
restarting.
Yeah, she.
Someone talked about.
I think it was that syncopation thing, Michelle. that Tasha said, "No, I'm not having drums."
Something about the heartbeat or whatever. She just said, I'm out.
I think it was when Chuck said that we should have a praise song called "Let's Chill."
Let's settle down.
Yeah, because that's what I want to do. Just
my goodness.
You know why? You know why, Tally? Because all my love is for you.
Oh God.
Well, whatever you want, I will do, man.
Yeah.
I forgot the rest of it.
You're the only one I want in my life, man.
I see a T-shirt coming. Calm
for
down.
you, I'll make this sacrifice.
Just make the sacrifice. Wait, hold up. 1, 2, 3. Let's
chill.
chill.
Yes.
Okay, you know what? Pop off for a
We had
second.
Michelle will
to,
never
once,
come
once the
again.
producer left, we could do whatever we want.
Hey, I'm like, wow, what happened
You know,
here?
it was like when the teacher leaves the class in elementary school. We just cut up. You know.
When she was gone, I'm sorry, Michelle. We went haywire just because.
Worship gone wild.
Yeah, you're right.
We're gonna walk it out in a minute. So
That's right.
You know,
Thank you,
someone
Michelle,
put
for being
something in
part of our
the chat.
tonight.
Michelle, I wanted to put it up here.
Mm.
Because I thought it echoed.
Oh,
I was feeling it's obvious why Maestro Michelle has been in her position for 21 years. Such a high level of professionalism. She could teach a master class to other churches. And
Yeah.
So true.
If you need an agent, I'm right here.
yeah. And
Yeah.
thank you, Miss Lubin, for your kind comment.
absolutely. Much
Yeah.
appreciated. Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
Well, let's land the plane.
yes, guys. I mean, I think we could talk about worship, praise and worship,
Yeah.
weeks and weeks and weeks. But I think that what we're kind of coming down to is recognizing a certain level of appreciation for different styles and being able to appreciate what you enjoy, but not putting down what someone else may enjoy, as long as the intent is to worship God in spirit and in truth. That's all that really matters.
Amen.
Mhm.
Things- But let's not forget to make the main thing the main thing. We know what that is.
We're losing your audio there.
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
You were.
Oh no, what's
This
happening?
is what's
Yes,
happening.
that's
This is what
better.
happens when she try to preach. You
Well,
know,
No, this is what happens
the
when
conference
like
only
7:30.
pays for an hour and a half of this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so we're at the point now where your quarter is running out.
they gave her satellite internet.
Yeah.
Mm.
But anyway,
So,
But once
Michelle,
again-
again, we apologize. We
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah. Pleasure to have you, Michelle.
I'm having
Yep.
a good time.
Awesome.
we appreciate everything that you brought. Yes.
Can
I
I
hope
just
it was,
add
I
this,
hope it was
Michelle?
helpful. We could talk about this
Yeah.
all day, every
Yeah.
day, and
Yeah.
never finish a conversation.
I think it would be great, and as we close, for you to be able to go to churches and meet with music directors
I've done that.
to help through it. You know, and Tally will make sure you get something for that.
Yeah. Besides a warm smile and a chocolate.
Well, it boils down to everybody has their own mixtape.
Hey,
Wow.
let me
That's a good one.
There we go,
say that.
Michelle. I'm inviting you to my church.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm inviting you to my
privilege.
church, and not for free. Just come on and help us.
Yeah.
You know, to help us.
Since you said that, Michelle, if someone wants to reach out, someone listening and say, "Hey, our church needs someone like a Michelle to come and help get us on the right track," how can people reach out to you?
They can contact me at the church at worship@capitolhillsdachurch.org. And I'll be happy to share my mobile number once they contact me via email.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead and share it now. We will.
All right. Yeah.
Well, here we go.
One way or the other.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
Thank you for being here. Thank you all for your engagement in the chat and your comments. We appreciate you as always. We thank you for tuning in to the Upset Podcast. We hope you'll join us back here next Sunday, same time, same place, because if it's Sunday,
It's time to raise your hands, everybody in the building.
Woo! Walk it out. Walk it out.
is this what praise and worship does to you guys?
All day.
Well, just so that everybody will have something, calm. We're going to go out with Evan Hawkins and the Oh Happy Day, baby.
Here we go.
I'm like, Charles, don't have it queued up. Like, what are you doing now?
And you heard his radio voice too, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a new experience right there.
Because if it's Sunday,
Yes.
the Upset
Upset
Podcast.
Podcast.
Thank you. All right. See you
Peace,
back.
everybody.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.